Welcome to the Writing Gals podcast. We're so excited you're here with us tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about author branding, and we have tons of great questions about that. But before we do that, we're going to update on any news and things that are going on with us. So let's start with whoever unmics first gets it. Who wants it? First one.
I'm always the last person. How did I win?
All right, Michelle, you're in.
Okay, so this week I have been writing Still Saved by the Movie Star, and I got to write a fun kissing scene today, so that was a highlight of my week. I've also spent a lot of time working on my Regency, To Love a Gentleman, and it is starting to really make progress. So, yeah, I'm really excited about how that's going. My box set is doing pretty good. It's starting to kind of stick where it is. It's not super high, but it's bringing in some good page reads every day. So that's helping me out since we all know sales are kind of a little bit of a slump right now. I'm really glad I decided to put that out, but that's really all I have going on right now.
Well, that's awesome. That's great. All right. Judy, do you want to go next?
Sure. For me, I've just been writing. I've actually been getting something written this week. I'm doing good. I'm like getting towards the middle of the book, which is always the part that I like the best. And it always just finally starts flowing. So yeah, it's been good. And nothing much besides that.
That's awesome, because I'm really great at the beginning. I go, and then the middle sags for me. I'm like, when is this going to end? So yeah, it's awesome that
I rewrite a lot. So I like the middle. It's good.
That's good. All right, Amy, what's been going on with you?
Well, I am 32,000 words into Her Boss. And it's kind of an interesting story because I've never written a nanny trope before. And so it's kind of hard as telling these ladies, because you're like, how do you push two people together that are supposed to be apart according to the plot? So I'm struggling with that. And also the character, my female character, she's very shy and kind of unsure of herself, which is not my personality. So it's kind of hard to write it, but I'm just relying on everything I know about writing. Sorry, my husband's being very loud. And just getting through the story as best I can. And then I just finished my photo shoot and picked my photos for my YA series, the prep school one. So I'm really excited to start that one. Exciting. And me and Judy have very exciting news that I'm not sure if we can share it all, but know that later on down the line, things are happening for us. So we're excited to share those.
A teaser
with everybody.
Oh, you're so mean.
But we can't say. Well, actually, I asked my agent, can we say? And he's like, well, let me get back to you because I'm not sure. So at some point we'll be able to share. But right now,
people are going to be making up all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like, comment below. What do you think it is? Subscribe below so you can find out in a couple weeks what it is that we're doing. That's super exciting. So just kind of moving forward, I think, and getting the 2019 started off on a great start.
Fantastic.
That's what I'm doing.
That's great. All right. Well, I've been working more on my young adult romance that I've been working on. It's a high school romance, just same stuff that I've been working on, but getting more words down. So that's good. And we are excited tonight to talk about author branding. So we'll just jump right into those questions. And I kind of grouped them a little bit based on what people were asking. So let's start off with the very basic one. Lila Holt asked, what is author branding? Is it the covers, colors, fonts? When I buy a book, I look at the author name, book title, etc. So is branding really a factor? That's a great question.
It is. Wow, if only we had an answer. I was thinking about this, and one thing that I like to think about is, have you ever met someone who just remembers authors' names like crazy? Like they say, hey, who do you like to read? And they'll list like 25 different author names. Well, I'm terrible with names, really, really bad. Unless I know someone personally, I have a hard time remembering or they're my favorite. I think that readers see all these authors on Amazon all the time. And if they pick up your book and they really like it, they just need something that helps to trigger that memory. And a lot of people are really visual, you know? And so sometimes they may not remember that your name is Michelle Pennington, but if they remember a certain look, a certain way that your name is always on the bottom of your books or top or whatever, it's always the same, it triggers that memory, like, oh, there she is. Oh, I like her, you know, and it breeds familiarity and recognition. And that's what branding is all about, is to tell people who you are, what you do, and have that instant recognition so that when they see you, they have that reaction to it.
That is
Well,
anything.
And I think branding is not necessarily just you as an author, but even specific down to you as your series. Like with my photos I just had taken for my prep school series, I mean, I was very specific that they all looked similar but different, but to the point where if somebody saw the cover, they wouldn't think, oh, I already read that book, because that's not what you want. But they can sit there and go, oh, this looks like the book I read and enjoyed, and I'm going to pick up the next in the series or the next in the series, because they're going to have a similar look and feel. All the photos are going to look similar. And then when Victorine does my covers, then all the text placement will look similar, and all the author placement of your name will be the exact same. So nothing is left up to chance of whether or not they recognize the book.
Yes. Good answer.
Which can be good and bad, because if we all use the same stock photos, then people can get confused. You know what I mean? Like, have I read that book before or have I not?
Yes, I agree. Although usually the author name and the titles are different enough that you can tell kind of the difference between the two. But
it's something to think about when you're branding that specific series. And when we started our series, we're like, you know, with Michelle, it was the something with billionaires, and it had to start with a T. And for me, all my billionaire book starts with F. So you kind of, if you start branding yourself as a certain, or your series as a certain way, you have to continue it out through, you know, so you just want to be careful that don't start the first one with an F and the second one with an F, because then everything else has to go with an F. You got to be careful with that.
Well, and also in your covers, there is another thing. It's not just the font work on it. The cover image can be used in a lot of different ways in the design. You know, like most of mine are cropped up kind of close, so it's like torso to top of head kind of, you know. A lot of people shift down and just have like the strong jaw. A lot of people do further out, and then they'll have this whole background and another person behind them. I mean, there's a lot of elements that can go into making a cover. And if you stick with that across the series, then it becomes the brand of the series. And I would even say that I've noticed that a lot of authors tend to go with similar covers across series in the same writing category, or same trope even. Like if somebody has, you know, they write all cowboy romances, but they have different cowboy series, you will still see a lot of similarities across their series. So do you guys mind if I screen share my page just for a second so I can illustrate it, what I'm talking about just a little bit? Okay, hold on, because you guys know I am not the technical person in the group. Okay, I'm hitting screen share. Is it working? Anybody? Can you see it?
It's working.
Okay, good. Okay, so what I was going to show you is, so this is my first contemporary romance series right here. And you will see that even though they're not all precisely the same, the covers all match each other really well because of the font work, because they are men that have shirts on, And then I have the series name across the top. Okay, but what's interesting is, so my author name, I really like the way that the font work is done here, and Victorine did that for me. And then the series that and here's my Christmas series I'm working on. You'll see that my name is done the same way, and it's in the same place on the cover. Even though the font work and the style of the cover is different, those parts are the same. And then up on my new series that I'm started on, here's a little bit of a cover reveal for some of you. So here we have the same thing where my name is the same, but we have a completely different font going on here that matches this series. And then you see that these books are working well. But if you see, there's a lot of similarities too between these two series. And so this is kind of a look for me, while at the same time you can kind of see that you can definitely tell that they're different series. So anyway.
Michelle, I have a question. So why are you doing Saved by a Billionaire instead of Saved by the Billionaire? Which is...
Oh, I just did that wrong when I was working on my little canvas
okay.
placement.
I was like,
yeah, no, I noticed
you switched it for the last two.
No, I know. I noticed that the other day, and I was like, oh, I put the wrong word in there.
Okay.
So I might redo my little cover placements. I'm trying to figure out all my covers, and I want to give them all up there and say come and save it. So far, I just have a little stupid place.
But that's an example of like keeping consistent in your brand for that series, is the flow of the titles and the way they work.
Yes.
And I know Judy has, like, her titles for her YA aren't necessarily the same, but they have the same like cadence to them. Don't they, Judy?
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want me to show what I have?
Yeah.
done? Okay. So let me do this. So can you see? Okay. So for my young adult series, you can see, so this is something a little different. So my first 4 books of my series, they obviously look very similar. But then I was in a group promo thing, and we had to use certain covers that needed to look like the other people's covers in that Christmas promo thing. And so I have to keep this cover until February 1st. But I've been very careful to, do like 3 or 4 words. And I try to have like a fancy, like a more scripted font in the middle, and try to have the title similarly. And I kind of shot myself in the foot, I guess, when I first started, because I used a non-tropey title for the first book that I released. And so then I kind of got stuck with having just more like romancy type things, or things that kind of like had something to do with the story. But then something I've done to brand myself, because I wanted to be a young adult and a clean romance author. And so even before I had published my adult clean and wholesome book, I made sure that I started branding myself as young adult and clean romance author. And so everything, says that. And then because I wanted a tagline that will go for either genre, it's all contemporary romance, just different age groups. I chose Laugh, Cry, Swoon because that gives an idea of what is in my books. I'm always, starting with a little humor in chapter 1 usually, and then and I try to use humor throughout. But then also one of my goals is to make my readers cry, and then I want them swooning all throughout, but then especially at the end. And so that's something that did my screen share stop? Okay.
It did.
Okay, so that's what I've tried to do. But then also to, is it back now?
Yeah.
So also to keep my brand. So this is just on my website. But another thing that I like to do is I have like this photo right here. I put it on Facebook, and it has Judy Corey, young adult and clean romance author, and then it has my tagline. And I try to kind of went with the blue and the pink theme. And so I try to keep a lot of things blue and pink in my everything to do with my author stuff. And so this is like an example. I even use it in my newsletter. Let's see. Okay. And so I have that same photo at the top and the pink, and then you'll see that throughout I use pink for my buttons and then blue also for different things. And I just try to keep that branding all throughout, having pink and blue everywhere, so that the my readers will just kind of know, oh, that's Judy. And yeah, so that's kind of what I've done to brand myself.
That's excellent. And I really should take notes from you, because I don't brand my newsletter like that. And that's a great idea. So yeah, perfect explanation, you guys. Rachel John asks, how does branding apply to what you write? And Sandra asked something similar. How do we determine our authentic brand? So what do you guys think about, depending on what you write, how you want to brand yourself?
Well, I think for me, I just want to be known as a clean romance author. So I want to brand myself as that. And I don't necessarily want to brand myself into a specific genre, just because I don't want to grow bored of where I'm writing. And so I love it when I get comments like in my reviews or anywhere where they go, I love Anne-Marie Meyer's books because they're clean, and I know they're clean, and I know I can pick one up, and I know it won't be a, I won't find anything that I don't want in the book. And so to me, that tells me I've established myself as a clean romance author. And I think through your covers, you could, through your titles, your series names, even as a subtitle saying that it's a clean book. So I think that's how branding for me would apply to what I write. And I mean, how do you determine your authentic brand? What do you write and what do you enjoy writing? I think that's how and then you just go from there. But I think I would encourage people, unless you wanted to be like, no, I want to be known as a sci-fi dragon writer, like then lean into it. Do that 100% in everything you're doing. But if not, I would suggest you to be more broad than specific, just because you don't know what you're going to want to write in a couple of years. And do you want to continue just writing under this name, or would you brand it yourself under a different pen name? And I think with traditionally published, they're like, no, you're a sci-fi writer. You cannot write fantasy. But I don't necessarily think that's true, because I don't want to brand myself as a specific genre. I want to brand myself as an author. And so I can write in whatever I want to write in, because I think people fall in love with authors and will follow authors. If they're a hardcore author, will follow them into any genre.
Right. But I do think it's important to kind of brand like your, you have non-romance books. You've got your young adult, what do you call it?
Fairy tale retellings.
Yeah, those fairy tale retellings. And those are branded a little bit different, and they're even under a different name than your romance ones. So I do think it's important to kind of keep it together, especially. And I think that's why the traditional publishers do that, is they want to brand that author as that one thing. Because when you go to McDonald's, you always know what McDonald's is and what you're going to get with McDonald's, and you don't expect McDonald's to be Burger King or anything else. And I think that's what the traditional publishers want to do.
Yeah,
I was gonna. Oh, go ahead.
I know that like one of my author friends who is traditionally published, she had written one book it's middle grade, and it was about 3 girls who were friends. And that's the only book that she had written like that when she first started. She had these other books, but her publisher wanted her to publish at least 3 books first that were like that, to kind of, let people know who she is and what to expect from her, and then maybe consider about branching out after she had already let people know who she was.
Perfect. That's a great example. I'm going to screen share this just because.
Hold on a minute, Victorine. So I'm going to retract what I had said, because what I meant was so like now that I'm established as a clean romance author or a clean author, I think if I could take down those books under my pen name and put them under Anne-Marie Meyer, and I think those books could do better than where they're sitting right now. So I wouldn't suggest anybody messing with an author brand until, like they said, Judy, where you have 3 or 4, or you have 2 series or 3 series, or you have an established series where you will consistently put out similar things and then branching out. I mean, I didn't do YA until I had consistent adult. So, I mean, don't go like all over the place. But then then we're going to talk to Michelle, who's got all different starts to different genres of books. So, but I think if you're starting out, focus on one thing and then a branch out. But I think overall, I'm saying in the end, in 10 years from now, I want to be able to write whatever I want to, because people know I'm clean, and that's all. Like, to me, that's all that matters, that my readers know.
Well, and I've seen it both ways. I'll go ahead and screen share now, because we all know Nora Roberts, right? And she writes romance. And when you think Nora Roberts, you think romance. And so that's what she's branded under. But she wanted to write something else. So she writes under J.D. Robb as well. And those look completely different. That is a different brand because it's a different style of book. And you wouldn't think Nora Roberts when you see this type of book. But you also have Mary Higgins Clark, who is very branded under the suspense kind of genre. But when you scroll down, you see she also writes kids' books as well. So every once in a while, you'll see one of her children's books in here with her other brand. And she didn't change her name. She didn't write under a pen name for that. She put it out under Mary Higgins Clark. And so I think authors could do it both ways. I don't think you have to be stuck only branding and then changing names every genre that you do. Just like Michelle, she would have 20 pen names if she, to every different thing she did. And that would be really hard to keep track of. But Michelle does a really great job of branding herself as a romance writer who writes under different types of genres.
Yeah. So, and you do need to be careful though, also, because you don't want to write children's books with one name and then write erotic with the same name, because that could really mess up some stuff. So you do need to be thoughtful.
Very good advice.
So the reason that I can do what I'm trying to do is that all of my work is clean and it's all got a lot of romance in it. And so the people who like those two things will follow me around to different story worlds, if that makes sense. And of course, it's all still a grand experiment to see how well it works in the long run. But here, let me show you what I've done to try and start from the very beginning of my career to let people know what it is that I'm doing. So, okay. I'm just going to double check and make sure that I'm screen sharing, right? Okay. So on my author page, I have, this is my writing logo or motto, or what are we saying here? Tagline: writing clean, heart-pounding, sigh-inducing romance across genres. And I'll shorten that to writing clean romance across genres, or clean romance across genres. Just, letting them know I'm not just sticking to one place here. And so if you look at my my website, I have all my tabs with my different categories, and under each one of them, you will have this other little tagline that tells you what kind of stories I'm writing. So like all the spark, all the sizzle, all the happily ever afters. And then young adult is all the angst, all the drama, all the first kisses. And Regency, all the wit, all the banter, all the longing glances. And fantasy is all the wonder, all the danger, all the love worth fighting for. And sorry, my daughter's in here. Heidi, shh. There's a kitten and a balloon, and the two are very noisy. So what I do with those taglines, besides putting them on my website, is I also put them on my newsletters. When people subscribe for my newsletters, I've recently refurbished everything so that now people can choose when they, instead of signing up for multiple newsletters, they can sign up for my newsletter and then choose which ones they want to get. So they can get pick, hey, I like Regency and contemporary romance, or I like contemporary and young adult, or I like all of them. So send me all of your newsletters. And whatever the newsletter is, it has that same tagline to it. Whatever category it is, there's a little bar at the top that has that tagline in it. And when I get really cool, and what I'm working on is to have a consistent author logo, or, some pretty thing like Judy's got going on, which I haven't worked out yet. And so that way, Heidi, shh. And so that way you're going to know that I have, different things that I do, and you can pick and choose what you want to do with me. But my readers know going into it that that's who I am. That's really important to me, because if we're talking about what our authentic brand is, that's me. I am not going to be happy in any one place. I want to go everywhere and do everything.
You've done a great job branding yourself as an author that writes across those genres, though. You've done a superb job at tying them all in together. And I think that is a great example for anyone who writes in more than one genre, who wants to stick with their own same name across everything, is to find something that ties them all in and brand yourself that way. And you've done a fantastic job with that. Great example. And Cynthia Port asked a question. We kind of covered it just a little bit. She said, author branding versus series branding. And I really like what you said, Michelle, when you showed your books, is that you have that same logo type name on all of your books. Even though the series brand looks different, you have your author brand still looking the same. And as I design covers for authors, I try very hard to use the exact same font, the exact same placement if I can, and the exact same way to put it forth. Because every time you look at, like, you drive by Perkins anywhere in the world, it's going to have that same look, because that's their brand. And so that's what I'm trying to do as a cover designer. And so I suggest that for all authors, is to try and brand their name that way. All right, Deb said, how do you brand a name with multiple levels of heat in contemporary romance?
I don't know. That's kind of tricky. I know one author who she had her name, just her first name and last name for like her clean romance. And then she had her first name and last name plus her middle initial for like spicier or whatever. So that's something you can do, because you're still keeping your name, just making it slightly different. You just have to tell your readers that's what it is. Or you could just do your first name and last name for one, and then your, like your first name and middle name initials. So I'd be like Judy Corey or J.A. Corey or something like that. So
yeah.
So one of the things I was thinking about is that if you are totally comfortable with people knowing that you write both things, I mean, the only time I would necessarily try and hide it is if, maybe you write something really spicy and you don't want, your coworkers or your boss or your mother or your grandmother, there are reasons why sometimes people want to keep a pen name, really under wraps. But if you're comfortable with everybody knowing who you are, you can kind of play around with like the Sour Patch Kids kind of thing, where you have the sweet and sour, where you could do like, spicy, sweet, and just like show them on the same place, but have their strong contrast. Let them be foils to each other. Like have the black and the fiery colors in your font on the spicy side, and maybe more of a, light, neutral, florally thing on the sweet. I mean, just play with it and let people see, hey, there's these two sides of me, and brand them accordingly and brand them together if you want to, make it part all together of who you are. It just really depends on what your goal is. Like, what do you want? Do you want your audience to do both? And we've talked about this a lot. Being sweet authors, we know that there are people who will read both spicy and sweet, but there are not very many sweet people who will go into spicy. So you kind of have to remember that you may not be able to carry all of your sweet people to your spicy side, but it's possible to move some of those spicy people to your sweet stuff. And go ahead, Judy.
Oh, and then another important thing, obviously, the cover photo will definitely show what that is. So you might not even have to do the name thing that I said. You can just, there's a spicy looking man and there's a clean cut, less spicy looking couple or whatever.
Definitely. And I think looking at how Harlequin handles it is perfect because they have a lot of different heat levels, and each of their heat levels has a certain look. And, all of their sweet stuff, I think it's called Bliss. So that is on every single cover. So all you'd really have to do is brand each heat level with some kind of name and put it in a bar across the top or whatever, and make that a different brand than your spicy. And like Judy said, obviously the guy without the shirt on is going to indicate it's a spicier heat level than the guy that's fully dressed.
But I would say you do need to be very, very, very clear about what each book is, because otherwise you're going to get readers stumbling into something that was not what they were looking for. So it needs to be clear in your tagline, in your title, in your blurb, especially, in your, anything that you can do to let them know like what they're getting into, then you're going to be able to keep your audience happier.
I agree. All right. Anne asks, I already have a strong brand, contemporary romance, and I want to write romantic suspense. How can I brand that or tie it to my brand without changing everything or getting people confused? And Susanna asked something very similar. She wants to know about branding your pen name with covers, mailing lists, etc. when you write in more than one subgenre. For example, clean and contemporary, wholesome contemporary romance, and romantic suspense.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things here. Branding as an author who writes romantic suspense, and then also branding her series. So I think what probably the most important thing I would say is focus on is to brand your romantic suspense series all together. Probably like what we talked about, keeping your name the same on the book, like in the same font, but you can change up the font of the title, because especially if you want to bring people from book to book to book in your series, you need to make it as easy a transition as possible. And then what I would do is just really amp up the fact that now you're writing romantic suspense. So you could be like, Anne B. Harrison, if that's what you write. Contemporary romance now with a twist, or now with suspense, or something like that. So you could tack on something at the end, indicating that now you're adopting this new like type of romance, but still it's romance. So I think you might be worrying a little too much, because what we're talking about is like big, genre shifts. We're talking about fantasy to sci-fi, or romance to sci-fi. And even if you were like, well, it's sci-fi, romance, it's still more sci-fi than it is romance. So you need to warn people of that. But contemporary romance to romantic suspense is pretty similar. But if you want to, I would lean into it and just really emphasize that now you're adopting this new part of or this new type of book series. That's what I would suggest.
I agree. And I actually did that exact same thing, because I am known more as a contemporary romance writer, and I wrote a romantic suspense. And so I'll show you what I did. This is my Billionaire series, and it's really branded as contemporary romance. And then when I did my romantic suspense, I put a bar at the top and kind of did a little logo-y thing up there. But my author name is still the same, just like over here. And so my author brand is still branded across the different genres, but this one is a darker cover, darker colors. And so I wanted to brand it more like that. All right. Melissa asks, which authors, you and those you love to read, do you feel have a great brand, and how can you tell?
couple that I like followed when I was first getting started was Elena Johnson, and also her pen name Liz Isaacson, and then also Lindsay Armstrong. They did a really good job of branding themselves in their specific genres. And they just made their newsletters and their author page and everything just look really nice and clean, and I could tell exactly what I was going to get when I read their books. So I thought they did awesome.
Good examples. Yeah, I showed the screen of J.D. Robb and Nora Roberts and Mary Higgins Clark, and all those have a really good brand. I think as long as if you can think of an author and you know exactly what you're going to get when you read that author, then they have a good brand. Just because your brand isn't as much your logo as it is the experience you get when you read their books. Just like
I would say Mark Dawson has a really good brand as
yes.
well. And he models his after a lot of the same thrillers writers. So I don't really know. I don't read thrillers. Is that what he writes? He writes thrillers, right?
I don't know. I don't read his stuff.
I know, but I've seen his books a lot, and I like Lee Child and a couple other people. He brands them off of that. I think it's taking the guesswork out of your book. So writing to market and branding, or not branding, and showing your books to market. I mean, those and branding, they all kind of encompass into one thing. So if you're watching other people's covers and you're writing and you're doing things similar to what they're doing, like what majority of people are doing, if your covers look similar to them, you're innately creating a brand for yourself that people are going to recognize. We're not saying go out there and create your own brand, your own self. I'm going to create my romance, but instead of having, kissing, I'm going to have their feet, well, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, don't try to be the brand new, I'm going to brand this my own way. I mean, you can rely on other people who have already branded stuff in that genre or in that category to rely, so other people can rely on that brand and bring across. Like when I started YA, I started using legs on my covers because that's what was, people know when they look at that's YA romance. And then putting, your title or the cover photo that you would pick opposed to somebody else, and then the title that you use, that's now your brand that you're bringing to something that's well known and well loved and already branded, that you're not having to like reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
So I would say it's something interesting since we're talking about authors that we follow. So one of my favorite authors is Lindsay Buroker, who writes sort of some steampunky, science fiction-y, fun stuff. She's kind of, a little bit of a pioneer for indies in a lot of ways, and she has a great podcast too. But when I first found her covers were very, very graphic oriented, very just plain in a lot of ways, because it was just the solid color with the graphic work and the title and her author name, and then for each book in the series she just changed the name of that book and it was all the same, and it was just, that's what it was. And so it wasn't like this incredible digital artwork or anything like that, but the book was so good. The first book I read was so good that I was like, oh, I got to get me more of these. And so I was able to find all of her books just really easy because, they all look the same. And I was like, boom, 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 boom. And now when I went back and looked at her, she's, really successful. Now she's gone back in and recovered all of her early series and they look great still, and she's branded them really well. It's just interesting to me. And there's another author, MC Beaton, and I found her Regency romances, and they were all kind of the same thing, where it was, the same graphic work, and she just changed the color and title on each book in the series. Boom, 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 boom. And I was like, well, I know exactly what I'm looking for, and I would just go find it. It's not necessarily that it's not earth-shaking what we're talking about here. It's just giving them something that they can key into And you know, it's about what's inside the book always. You know, your branding is only as good as what's inside the book, because if they read it and they don't care what's inside enough to try and find the next one, then the best branding in the world is not going to do you any good. So,
Exactly.
anyways, sorry. I just got up on a soapbox. I'll step down.
No, that's great. Our next question is from Remy, and she asks, which styles work best for different genres? Do you want to blend in or stand out from other author brands in your genres? And Kayla asked something similar. How would you suggest standing out with your covers so it's recognizable to your readers without confusing new readers on what subgenre it is?
So I don't know if you want to like stand out too much, but you do want to stand out a little. So I think first just start by looking at the different books in your genre, look at the bestseller lists, see which ones are selling, which styles seem to be selling really well, and then just pick one that you like that fits your personality and what you think would fit your books really well. Start from there, and then you can, of course, to make it you know, choose your own, like get a little bit different font maybe that still definitely shows the genre, but just you can make little tweaks to make it your own, maybe use different color, but so there are things you can play with, but you also want to match the genre so that the reader knows that they're getting a contemporary romance or a sci-fi or fantasy.
Definitely. I agree. You don't want to stand out too much. You want to blend in with what brand, what genre brand you're trying to sell people. So you want to look like, because if they read one book, they're going to look for similar books if they like that genre. So you want to look similar to those.
Yeah, and as an indie author, you want to be looking at the indie bestseller, like the ebook bestseller list, instead of like the paperback or hardcover, because those will be, you know, more traditionally published and they have their own different style.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think what you can do to stand out is not so much how things look, but using your creativity to create really fun titles and blurbs and taglines. Because what you initially want to do and with your brand is to draw the reader in. The way your cover looks and your title looks is like the flashy little thing, you know, the lure on your fishing line. And to get them to bite, that's all the other stuff that you do. So that's where being creative with your title, being creative with your blurb, you've already brought them in, you've attracted them with the flashy, you know, fun stuff. Now hook them with all those other parts of your book. One of my books, rule number 1, you can't date the coach's daughter, are branded really well. They're different in terms of my titles than other YA books, but they look similar to the other YA books. But I hook the readers that know Legs are a YA book. So they come in, they're interested, they click on it, they go in, then they read the title, and it's a catchy title, and it's very different than a lot of the other YA titles. And so I think in order to stand out, it's not so much, you know, put like, you know, neon colors on your cover. It's make your cover interesting, but then be different in everything else that makes you special as a writer. And stay away from trying to mimic, copy other authors. Be yourself, find the way to best describe your book, you know, and then move on from there.
Perfect.
So I just want to say really quick, in the young adult category, Judy's branding has just been really great. I mean, her YA books are just so well branded. And so it's interesting when Amy branched out into YA that, you know, they both have covers that have the legs on them, but the branding on the 2 series is completely individual to them. And you know, Amy's Rules series is not only a brilliant, you know, the covers aren't only good because, you know, she did like some photo shoots with some of them and like they were just really, really cute. But the whole concept for that series was her part of her branding, and that's what made hers, stick out from all the other YA authors. That are, YA's got a lot of series that are doing really well. And Judy's still topping the charts and YA stuff all the time. So it's interesting that Amy could come up with a concept itself that allowed her to brand in a unique way while still fitting within the genre norms. So I think that was definitely a great example we can all look at.
I'm going to say thank you, Victorine, for coming up with those covers for us. So got to have a good cover designer to help you with some of those things, because I wouldn't be able to figure it all out on my own.
Well, you're welcome. All right, we have another question from Samia. She says, how do you do your branding when you don't want to show your face because you have several pen names for various genres? She doesn't care about fame. She doesn't care about people seeing her face. She cares about writing. So what do you guys think?
I guess, so do you think this is focusing mostly on like your author photo type thing?
Yeah, I think she wants to know about how do you brand when you don't have a photo, because I think it shows on Amazon, right? Your photo.
Yeah. So what I've seen other authors do is they can, so I'll just show a couple examples. So like Brie Livingston, she has an avatar that she uses to represent her, which is fun, and then kind of shows her personality. And then so you can get an avatar, of course. She started out with this thing, and so like Hannah Hart, she just has her name with like a heart around it, which kind of shows that it's romance. You can expect that, and then just her name, and you don't know what she looks like. So that's something you can consider doing. And yeah.
Perfect. And I know you can find people to do both of those things on Fiverr for really cheap. So yeah, if you're like, don't want to show your face, I think that's fine. I don't think people have to show their faces on there, because people aren't buying your books because they like your face. They're buying your books because they like the experience they get as they read. So I think that's fine. All right, Danny wants to know, does everything need a logo? How can you use your logo or brand image to connect all social media?
Hey, Victorine, I think we need to also kind of narrow down the type of reader you're catching. So I think when you think of a series, you're going to catch a lot more readers that are just going to care about the branding of the series. But when you go down to branding as your author, that's the more hardcore fans that you're going to get. So that's where they would want to know more personal things about you. They would maybe want to see your face. They want to know where you live. They want to know what's going on. These are the people that are on your newsletter. These are the people that are going to buy everything that you have. So you really have to think about it in two different levels of, like, when I market my book, when I write a Facebook ad or I write an Amazon ad, I am bringing them into my series brand with the hopes of continuing them and turning them into an author fan. So if you're going to worry about anything, the first thing you should worry about is your series brand. And then as you continue to grow as an author and you start to get these author fans, that's when I would worry. So if you're like, how do I wrap my head around brand, and do I know I'm doing the right thing, or am I doing the wrong thing? And it can be a lot. I mean, you heard each of us where we're like, well, my website doesn't look like Michelle's, but my newsletter doesn't look like Judy's. And I bet Judy's like, well, my website doesn't look like Michelle's, but Michelle's, you know what I mean? So we all kind of go into it and do what we enjoy doing first, and then work on other things. So don't get overwhelmed with, I don't know if my brand's working or not. I would say if you want to catch the most fish, it's your series brand. And then come down when you have time, work on your author brand. Because to me, I think that's the more concentrated people that you'll have, because I would not go on Facebook and try to market me as an author. I don't think people would buy from that. They want to see the book. They want to see what I'm offering. They want to see the product. And then eventually, if they read my book and fall in love, then I will catch them as my fan. They'll sign up for my newsletter. They'll get to know me on an author level. And then I can worry about explaining to them or showing them, this is who I am as an author. This is why you want to follow me. So start with your series brands and then worry about your author brand.
I agree. Definitely. Good advice. All right. So what do you think about logos and using logos on social media?
So, like, since I don't have a logo right now, I'm working on one. I did like a little cheat thing where I actually took the bottom part of my fantasy cover where my name was, and I just used that places because, like I said, like the way my name is something that I've been trying to show people, like just because, you know, our brand is really not our name, but I mean our name, not our face anyway. So to like get a logo, look, hold on. Okay, so here's my profile thing right here. It's this, see, so that's from the cover of my mermaid book. And then if you go over to Facebook, I've got the same thing here. And, you know, it just is a cheat because I haven't done that yet, but it's right there, you know, for people to be like, oh, Michelle Pennington. And then they see my cover and they're like, oh, that's, it just is a visual. They don't even have to like figure out who I am. It just kind of, their brain, you know, takes it in and makes that connection.
We're doing a series as multi-authors, and I think this is where branding comes really important when you are having multiple authors write in a series, because it's not so much that they're following the author, which they will, but we also want to have them follow our series. So I'm going to do a little cover reveal here on the Writing Gal, so congratulations. And you're going to see half of Michelle's face. Congratulations on that too. Here, I'll just do that. No. She's so beautiful. We don't need to cover her up.
Cover my face up, Amy.
So when we were creating these covers, we have a template that we used and said, okay, everybody, you have to pick covers that look like this. So all of our titles are the same. All of our author names are going to be the same placement. But there's a couple of things that we wanted to add to the cover just to stand out. So when we have our series, it's a Sweetwater High series, and we have our mascot that we put on there. So all of the books have to have the title or the series name in this way. But we also wanted to add something fun up in the corner because we want to make this potential to have different classes. So up here, we have this little stamp that says Class of 2019. And every book will have that in this series. And then if we were to choose to do another Sweetwater High series, we would change this to Class of 2020 or Class of 2021, just so that people could know within this series which book they're getting. So that's another way of using a logo for a brand. And then now that I'm doing this prep school series, I was talking to Victorine, and I want to actually create kind of like a school crest on my series that will be on every cover. So it's kind of like just a cohesive thing that brings them all together, that gives the feel, because a lot of prep school series have crests. They have, you know, they're very traditional, so they kind of go back. So just putting these tiny little logos onto things brands it. And I'm trying to think, in every Harry Potter book, isn't there some, like the cover, there's some picture of Harry and his scar, right? Maybe?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be an example of another type of logo that they have put on this cover to brand that type of cover. So, and it's kind of fun to add as an author, to add these little nuggets onto your books that people can look forward to and know automatically, this is the book series I want to find, because all of these things equal, in just like Michelle said, in a blink of just looking at it, that equals the books that I love to read.
Perfect. All right, we have another question. Should we use ISBNs or not? And this is in regards to setting up an author-branded publishing house.
Well, I think ISBNs are basically for hard paperbacks, right? And
yeah,
you can. I think they're expensive. I don't necessarily think having your own that you've purchased is that beneficial. I've never heard anyone say, oh my gosh, I just love the fact that I bought my ISBNs. Most of the time people are like, I bought my ISBNs and now I have them. And then it just kind of, I never hear anything about it again. So I wouldn't necessarily say go put your money in the ISBNs, because that to me is not what's going to brand. And then an author branded published house, I'm guessing you mean you have a publishing house, but you're only going to publish your own books.
I think so. Yeah, that's what.
And even then, it's kind of touch and go. Do you necessarily need a publishing house to do that? No. A lot of people like to have that name there, that who it's published by, instead of Amazon. But that's just with authors. I'm sure as a reader, people have no idea what the heck any of that stuff down there means. We all know, but they don't know.
Yeah. See, I think number one importance, like Amy was saying, is brand your series and then brand your author. I think publishing house is probably way down at the bottom of the list, and only do it if it's really important to you, because it's not going to help you get sales. If you walk down the street and say, what's your favorite author? People are going to come up with all kinds of answers. But if you walk down the street and say, what's your favorite publishing house? People are going to look at you like you're weird, because people don't know who published, Twilight. People don't know who publishes Stephen King. They don't know.
I know who published Twilight. I totally really looked at that.
Because you're an author.
Yeah, if you're not, you might know.
I did it before I even wrote. I was weird.
All right, there's 10% of people will know.
I was going to say on the ISBNs, I think from what I've read, the purpose of it is to track sales, right? And it's really helpful if you have books published across multiple vendors. For example, if you do have a publishing company and you do sell a lot of paperbacks, and somehow you manage to get your books on the shelves in Barnes & Noble and some of the local bookstores in your town, and, they're selling on Amazon, and you got, all these different things, and you want to be able to track sales across all these different things, then that's the purpose of an ISBN. And that's why it's helpful for big time publishers, because they do sell them, in a lot of different storefronts and stuff like that. But I don't think for the majority of indie authors that ISBNs are going to function in any way that makes sense for us to take that cost on.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have extra money, it's not going to hurt you to buy an ISBN and brand that your publishing brand, but it's not really going to help you either. So I like to invest my money in what's going to bring me more money. And so I don't buy ISBNs. All right, Donna wants to know, I've read that it is good to have a consistent brand across Facebook header, newsletters, and so forth. Just having a hard time figuring out what my brand should look like as a cozy author. Any ideas?
Cozy authors need to have that sort of graphic look, and they need to have quite often either cats or dogs or some kind of baked goods. And so, find one of those things that maybe you're using on your covers and use that. If you've got cupcakes on a lot of your covers, then use a cupcake as part of your logo. And yeah, I do think that it's helpful if you can get your act together, unlike me, and put it everywhere and be consistent. It does help. A lot of times they say that readers need to see a book cover 7 times before they buy it, right? Well, it's almost the same thing with getting them connected to you as an author. So if there's someone who is a fan of yours, like Amy was talking about, you've converted them to become a fan of you and not just one of your series, then they may go out and look for you on different social media outlets. And, if they can find you on Instagram, and they can find you on Twitter, and they can find you on Facebook, and every time they find your page, it looks consistent across there, they're going to be like, boom, that's who this is. Boom, that's who this is. Oh, now I know who she is. And from then on, no matter where they see you, they're going to instantly know, hey, this is my person. And that's why it's consistent, instead of like I'm currently doing and not being consistent. I am not giving that broad, or actually really focused message in a broad world of social media. So
Yeah. Good answer.
Well, and I think you can have the prettiest logos and covers and headers, but if your content is not good, people aren't going to care. So make sure what you're providing is substance and that they want to read, and then worry about printing things up later. I mean, you could probably find, if this is not your cup of tea, there's people who will help you with this, who their goal is to help, or they what they do is market, and they find ways to create images that evoke feelings and things like that. So that's always something you could go. But your core part of you, and it's just like, you could have the prettiest covers and the nicest, you could pay somebody to help you write your blurb, but if the inside of your book doesn't work, people aren't going to buy it. Your book's not going to sell. So make sure that what you're giving your readers are something of substance that they want to continue coming back for. And then the branding stuff can come as you get more money or get more experience.
Exactly. Just to build on that, we've talked a lot on our podcast about how your covers can evolve over time. So can your logo. So can, as you start your writing career, you don't always know who you're going to end up as an author, where you're going to go with it, where you're going to take it, where you're going to kind of, build an audience or be successful. So, if I had started branding myself when I started 10 years ago or 8 years ago, then I would have thought I was going to be doing a completely different thing than I actually am. And I would have had to, change everything. So I would say, if you're a new author and you're just getting into this, don't go out and spend a fortune trying to get, an author logo. If you can get it for $5 or $10 and it's something really simple and something that doesn't cost you a whole lot of time, then do it. And don't get so emotionally tied to it that you never change it. Every company in the world updates their logo, updates their branding. They stay with the times. They realize that, they need to keep it fresh and that they need to give people something new to look at. And so just go into it knowing that this isn't, and also that's kind of freeing, isn't it? And then it's like not as stressful that you're not going to be stuck with the same logo for the next 30 years of your career. This is something that is going to and should evolve with you.
That's perfect. And I was going to screen share this, so I'm glad you said that. This is how Pepsi has evolved their logo over time. Well, it says 2008 to today, but I don't know if that's true. But anyway, you can see how they kept something from the previous logo each time they did a change. Even though some of the changes are drastic, they've kept something along the way. So if you're going to change your author brand or your author logo, make sure you keep something from the previous one in order to, so it's not a completely different experience for people when they're looking at it.
Yeah, that's a good point you made, that because I'm planning to update my photo so that I can use it in different places, but I'm going to make sure to keep the same pink things formatted the same until future changes.
Exactly. Definitely. All right. We have a question about how important is a tagline? Is it okay not to use one? I think for an author, Michelle's examples were beautiful for her different kinds of genres that she's writing. She had a tagline for each one, and they were similar enough that it really branded her as an author. And I thought it was great, but I don't have a tagline for my author. I don't have any kind of thing like that. So I would say it's not a bad idea to have one. I don't think it's horrible.
Adrienne also has New York Times bestselling author, though, so
Yeah,
that's my tagline.
Someone have our bestseller list needs something. No, you don't need something, but she can get away with it for sure.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Is it really important to have an author tagline?
If you can't think of one, I don't think you have to have one before you start publishing, but if something comes to mind later on, then use it, but it's not 100% necessary.
Yeah.
I've only had mine for a little over a year or something. I didn't start out with one right away, and that's okay. It's something that I began to decide, what, this is something I want to do. This is something I want to brand myself as. So how do I represent that? How do I tell my readers that that's who I am and that's what they can, get from me? And once I did that, then I developed it. But you don't have to have one. But at some point down the road, you may decide that you can. It's just one more tool in your toolkit, and it may be something that's really effective for you. And maybe it's not something that matters.
Yeah. I like how Judy uses her author tagline in her newsletter header as well as on Facebook and everything. So I want to be like Judy someday.
Well, and I think for
Cool.
me, in terms of getting visibility, having taglines for your books are really, I think, probably are most important, because when it comes to an advertisement, an ad copy, having a tagline is really, really helpful to evoke a feeling in your reader, especially if you want to keep your ad copy shorter instead of longer. It's just easier to have something there, and it's consistent. So if you have it on your ad copy and then they move over to your product page, then they see that, then they know they're at the right place. I think your author tagline is good, but you have to think about, I love Victorine's motto, and it's one I've adapted. I don't do stuff that doesn't make me money. So does having an author tagline make you more money? Probably not. I mean, it's fun to have. It's fun to have a cool website. But how many people go to, besides Judy, because she's the odd duck in all of us, how many people actually go to the author websites? Probably not. Probably a very, this has come back down to the author fans. So only your author fans will probably go to your website. So, or, you're going to go to a signing, you hand out your business card. That's where your business card is going to be. Your tagline is going to be on there. You could put your tagline on your newsletter. You could not, so it just kind of, start where the most important thing is, which I think is going to be your products, and then move out from there. But does Nora Roberts have a tagline? I don't know. Does she have a tagline? I should find that out. But probably not. Or does J.K. Rowling have a tagline?
Yeah, they don't need one.
I was going to say, someday my goal is to have my name is my tagline. That's all you have to do. Just put my name on it and everybody knows what they're getting and they want to buy it. So live for that goal.
So one thing to consider, though, is that if you do plan to be setting yourself up among all these different things, you're going to need something to put there. If you're building a website, you're going to need something to put on it. If you are starting a Facebook author page, you're going to need a banner. If you're going to start an author Twitter account, you're going to need a banner. And banners. You need them everywhere, So if you have something simple that tells people not only, your name, but that you're an author that does this, you're set. It's just a matter of a convenience at that point. Oh, well, I do have something. Click and just upload it. You know what I'm saying? So there is a very utilitarian point to having one too. And, it can be easy. So just give it a try and don't stress about it a whole lot.
Good advice. All right, just a couple more questions. Is having your photo on your business card important? I don't have one on mine.
I don't have a business card yet.
I don't have business cards either anymore.
I'm trying to decide if I want business cards or bookmarks. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, that's more important for connecting with other authors at conferences rather than selling books, because as indie authors, we sell mostly online ebooks. And so to have business cards, to me, that's more of a connecting with other authors thing.
If you do a lot of, person-to-person sales, you go out and set up your table and sell your books. And yeah, you want to have something that people can take with them. But again, they're not going to be paying. You're not selling them on your face. That's not what you're hoping they're going to buy. That's not the business we're in. So unless you're selling, makeup or something, you don't need a face on there necessarily. If you want to have them where they're effective for both conferences and a signing, then you might go ahead and put it on there. But most of the time when I'm at conferences and I meet people that I think, oh, I want to go find them on, Facebook or something, I do it right then. It takes 10 seconds and I don't forget. So I stopped giving cards out. And a few times people go, you don't have a card? I'm like, no, my name's Michelle. Look me up. I'm done. I'm a bit of a rebel these days.
All right, Melissa wants to know, what platform do you feel is the most necessary to establish your author brand? Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and that kind of goes along with the very last one. What social media platforms have been the best in terms of connecting with your readers and for marketing? So what do you guys feel like author branding on social media?
I think Facebook is becoming more effective again. For a long time, we were all feeling like Facebook was doing nothing for us. But I feel like Facebook is definitely growing in importance again. And it's because we're able to use Facebook followers as audiences with ads. And it gives us a place to run ads through. And I think it also is really common. If you look at the statistics for where people are going to find books or to meet authors, I mean, there's just not even anybody close to Facebook. The graph is like Facebook's way up here and everybody's just all piddly numbers down here. And they say that young people are on Instagram and young people are on Twitter. Well, they might be, but they're still not the ones that are buying indie books. So you can spend a lot of time trying to track down teenagers on Instagram and try and convince them to buy your books, but it's not going to convert that well for multiple reasons. So Facebook's where I'm putting the majority of my focus these days, for sure.
Perfect. Me too. All right. And I would say that your author brand is probably not as much your presence on Facebook as it is how your books look and how you're branded on your actual product that you're selling, the experience that you're selling to people. And I have one more rant before we go to the live questions. And that is, please, when you're typing in your information, make sure your author name matches what you put on the cover of your book. Because, and if you are out on social media, make sure whatever you establish yourself as, you are using the same. Because there was somebody I met on a forum once, and she called herself Writer Girl, and she talked about her books. She posted about her books, but she didn't say what the title was or anything like that, and she didn't say what her name was. And so, but I got really interested and wanted to look up her books, and I couldn't. I didn't, there's no Writer Girl on Amazon, and she didn't, have her name on there. There was another instance in a forum where a guy was posting, and I was interested in his books, but the name he used was his initials and his last name on the forum. But on Amazon, it was his full name and his last name, and I couldn't find him. And later on, I was able to ask him, what are your books? And he told me. But brand yourself across everything the same so that people have an easy time to find your books, because there will be times when people see a post that you did online and they're like, oh, I want to go check out her books. And you want to make it easy on them. Don't make it difficult on them.
Kind of like if you're fishing, you don't always know how good they're on that hook. You need to land them as quick as you can.
Yes. So make sure you type it in the same every time and don't have it different on your cover and then different on Amazon and like that. All right. Do we have any questions on our live feed? I have not checked.
No, we just super thorough. Everyone says they're just taking notes and that we're answering all the unasked questions. So
good.
We have done our job.
Yay. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say one last thought that I'd had earlier that I didn't say. Just try to make things look as professional as you can. Like even your author photo, like it's not hard to get a professional looking photo. For mine, I had my sister take a picture of me when I was at the local university on their, campus. It was pretty. You just go when the lighting is good, which is, 2 hours after sunrise and 2 hours before sunset. So, just try to make yourself look as professional as you can. And you can also get like headshots at conferences also. So it doesn't have to be expensive to look good, but try your best to do that because they'll take you more seriously.
Yeah, and especially if we're talking about social media, it's not just your author picture, but it's what you're presenting to the world, and it can be true. I saw one guy, he said he liked to talk about controversial things because it got him a lot of people talking and commenting and da 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 da. I think he's over on Clean Indie Reads. You know who I'm talking about, Victorine?
No, who is it?
I'm trying to remember. But he deliberately invited controversy so that he could get traffic. And you can go that route. But at the same time, consider your audience. There are some audiences that might really go for that thing, especially if you write like nonfiction political books or something like that. Then that's exactly what you want to be giving people. If you're writing inspirational Christian romance, you probably don't want to be saying anything that's going to alienate your Christian romance readers. If you're writing science fiction and then you post things where you show you obviously know nothing about science,
Yeah.
it's just, you got to be an expert. You got to be an expert in who you are. You got to be an expert in who your readers are. And, branding is not, if you're going to be on social media, branding is not just, your logo. It's also how you interact with them and present yourself to them. If you're writing clean romance, don't be dropping inappropriate words or graphics that have inappropriate words or pictures that are inappropriate for what your brand is. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
And
In fact, one time,
don't
go
post
ahead.
on reviews. Don't argue with people.
Yes, don't do that either. But yeah, I follow a lot of authors on Instagram that write clean romance, and every once in a while they'll share something and I'm like, whoa. Like, and it reflects back on your readers' impression of who you are and what you represent. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll just say thank you for staying up late with us.
And next week we have Pamela Kelly on to talk about conferences. Since now it's a new year, we're going to learn from her all the conferences she's been to. She's also an admin over at 20 Books to 50K. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and just learning like what to prepare if you're going to go to a conference, what do you need, how to determine classes, all those things. So make sure you come onto our Facebook group and we will post questions, or you can post questions for us to answer during the podcast.
And this will be introvert friendly. I know a lot of people have mentioned on our Facebook group that they're a little nervous going to their first conferences. And so, this is something that will be great for those of you who might struggle with that.
Yes. Perfect. All right. Don't forget to subscribe down below. And thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.